Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor and his friends give you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides. That is my actual job title and last name, which is part of the reason why the mathematical model that I've built to predict various sports outcomes is affectionately known as Sideline. You'll hear more about the model during the course of this episode, set to cover the, we're going to say 4 best college basketball games and 2 kind of off-the-wall ones because it's a weaker Monday slate, but we've got 6 great plays for you, in my opinion. Scheduled to be played on Monday, February 27th, 2023. It's almost March, so if you're into the March Madness thing, which if you're here, you probably are, get excited. We're getting close. In case you're here, check out the webpage on the banner. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for some explanations and community rules. See the Google Sheet linked in the show description for Sideline's projection for every single game. Remember, this show covers picks on the best games, so the best picks on all games. Sign up on Patreon or Black Book Sports or different packages of price ranges based on your needs. Remember, the sports are unpredictable. So discussion on this show, project a typical game. It doesn't try to forecast one to a T, as that would be a foolish and impossible goal. We take a long-term view on here, not distracted when a team either can't hit or can't miss from 3. As these things balance out in the long run, but are hard to foresee before they happen. In other words, please understand that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to see it'll be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Jake, I say that every show, and we had 2 great examples on Saturday of this. North Carolina was one of them, shot almost 50% from 3 if they shoot their season average from 3. Virginia wins that game. That was an example of bad variance for those of us who had Virginia. Example of good variance was in one of the early games with Villanova and Creighton. We had Villanova getting some points at home, and they shot really well from 3. Pretty much cruised to victory. So you had 2 great examples there. One, we got good variance, one we got bad variance, where it kind of didn't really matter how you handicapped it, how you saw the game. It was all about who hit the threes, and that part's hard to predict. That's why I always talk about those games are just kind of out there. You just kind of whatever, just chalk those up to you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. It's all about the games that the teams don't go crazy from 3. Those are the ones that we're trying to hit, more than we lose. Those are the ones where our handicapping really comes into play. Because those games like that where teams just can't hit or, can't miss from 3 is just, North Carolina is shooting way better than their season average like that from 3 or Villanova. It's like, what are you going to do? It just is what it is, right?
Yeah, welcome to the argument of why the 3-point line should have never been put in, right? Because that determines the game, and it's a fun debate to get into, but not one for this show.
It is not one for this show, though. I will throw out. I love the idea, and I think Daryl Morey, I think is the one who talks about this. The 4-point play has argued for a deeper shot for that, which. You know what? At this point, why not? Just who cares? It sounds fun. I'm all for fun. Let's just do the fun, silly things. Doesn't really matter, right? Like, I'm like, why not? Who cares?
Yeah, I'm in. My only rant is, let's just face it, Detroit Mercy should not be getting Pistol Pete's record. If he does, should be asterished just because he played double the time.
This is also true. It's I don't want to be the get off my lawn, the Roger Maris 61 is always, I don't want to be that guy because whatever the record is the record, but it also, that was people get all crazied up about an extra few games or something, or what performance enhancers one person was using versus another, when it's we weren't regulating it. Who the heck knows? Who knows? Half the league would use stuff I don't know. To me, that's such in the weeds. This one's a little bit different because it's about the number of years you play is kind of a big deal, right? It's not like we're talking about a home run record over one guy hit this many home runs in 2 years versus 5, right? It's it's a kind of a different deal when you play more seasons, more that sort of thing. So a couple, a kind of a change here, and it's not going to be much of a change. So I don't want to freak anybody out here. We're going to talk more and make official plays on some money lines here. There's a couple of reasons why. One reason why, I personally like playing money lines a little bit better. I like when my objectives are aligned with the team's objectives. College basketball and basketball in general, the NBA is kind of the same way, right? The end of the game is kind of crazy. And Jake and I, you and I were talking about this before we came on here. You never know how it's going to end. Some teams take quick layups. Some teams start jacking up threes really early. Some teams foul down 5 with 10 seconds to go. Some teams, foul down 12 with 10 seconds to go. Some teams start fouling. Iowa starts fouling with 3 minutes to go or whatever it was, right? And North Carolina's done that a couple times. So they started fouling with like 2 minutes to go. It just kind of gets bonkers. It's really hard to model. And what I'm about here is how can we build a model to predict? And it just makes things, it just adds extra variance, extra craziness, and extra frustrations personally. And so I kind of think, hey, if I kind of like and that doesn't mean you aren't going to have crazy bad beats. You're still going to have bad beats. You're still going to have buzzer beaters. I mean, if you had Florida State, Miami this weekend, you had that buzzer beater, Arizona State. You're still going to have buzzer beaters half course, but I feel like it really minimizes the number of crazy things. So if I feel like it enhances my experience, I have to assume there's a lot of you watching who being on the money line would enhance your experience. We're still going to talk about spreads. We're still going to talk about numbers we would play. I'm going to make some of that information more available. Some of the model would take this number, that sort of thing. So we're still going to give all that information, same discussion. It's just the official pick will kind of be more money line based on those. So if you want to follow along, we'll be doing more money line, still be doing some totals. The way that I work the money line here is the same way we work baseball, which is to win a certain number of units. That way we don't risk 9 units to win 1 on a big favorite. Sometimes big favorites are worth playing. Big favorites are worth playing. Big dogs are worth playing if the probability you win is greater than the break-even probability of the money line. So we'll kind of have everything to win. What I set it up to is to win 3 units. So sometimes we'll wager 2 units to win 1. Sometimes we'll wager 1 to win 2. Sometimes we'll wager half to win 2.5 on a bigger dog. We'll have all that out. It'll all be in the sheet. It'll all be documented, but we'll still talk about this points spread. So if you're only about the spread, that's fine. We'll still have all that same discussion. So we're not trying to take anything away. Hopefully just adding some discussion, giving some people some different things to think about. Jake, did I summarize everything there?
Yeah. No, I think it's right, especially like these kinds of sports like baseball and basketball where they're playing so many times a week. Like legs come into the play and all that, and there's all sorts of kind of craziness because baseball, you've got. It doesn't matter how much you're down, you still get to bat that last inning.
Yeah.
So, so crazy things happen there. So, and just like late game fouls and all that. And when teams decide to call it quits and pull the plug can really change how a spread works out. So money lines are a lot safer to go around, lot less variance.
Yeah, and we have to remember, we'll talk about this, right? If a play, and I'm not a big fan of parlays in general. I'm not a big fan of 5-leg parlays. That sort of stuff. Most of y'all know my feelings about that. I will say if you're going to do parlays, though, the rule to follow, if it's a good play by itself, it's an okay play in a parlay. If it's a bad play by itself, it's a bad play in a parlay. We're going to talk about a dog that we're going to take today where I think the favorite is priced too heavy. By itself and in a parlay, both. The rules don't change because you put in a parlay, because what happens in a parlay is you're just adding more risk and you're adding more reward. And the idea is if the price is too steep, you're adding more risk than you are adding reward. So we'll kind of talk about it as we go through. That's the thing to keep in mind. I know a lot of y'all do money line parlays. Not necessarily a bad thing. What we want to just do is make sure that each leg on it is a smart investment. That's kind of what we're going to talk about here is which money lines are good. Where do you want to take a chance on a money line dog, that sort of thing. And I think the last thing to talk about coming into these conference tournaments and March Madness, the end of game stuff is going to get really wonky. And it's just kind of nice to avoid some of these points. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't. We're going to talk about them, but it's nice to just kind of avoid it and be like, hey, I don't have to care if a team's down 9 and fouling. We've already won or we've already lost. It's over. I don't have to worry about it. We just got to try to win or lose, which is what the teams are trying to do, because it's going to get kind of weird here as teams are knowing that they're the clocks are counting down on their season, right?
Yeah, especially these conference tournaments and those small teams. I mean, everybody wants a chance to play. Everybody, mom and dad want to see it, and it gets wild at the end.
It does. All right, well, that's enough of that. Before we get to the show, some reminders. So please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free. And if you turn on notifications, you won't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. I've already missed the picture, but check it out if you haven't yet. A lot of great benefits to be found over there above and beyond what we do here. $3 per month gets you the play of the day. For another $2 a month, you get all the model picks and access to the Discord chat, which is the place to get access to me, Jake, and cousin Jared. A lot of other great sports bettors over there talking about what they would play in college basketball and other sports. It's a lot of fun over there. Go to www.patreon.com/pickswiththeprofessor for more details. But even if you're not there, still thrilled that you're here. Let's get to it. But as always, take what you like and leave the rest. 7 p.m. Eastern, North Carolina at Florida State. Start off with a doozy here. I'm going to be on the favorite here, a little chalky, -335 with North Carolina. This officially is a risk 2.3 units to win 0.7 units. So it's not the the sexiest play, but the model says that North Carolina should be favored by 8.6. That translates to an 81% chance of winning, which translates to a moneyline price of minus 420. So it basically says North Carolina wins this 4 to 5 times. And if that's the case, that makes minus 335 a profitable investment. It's a B grade pick. It's not quite to the A grade status here. Jake, let's get this out of the way from the start. North Carolina minus 335. Clearly what I'm telling the people is to put North Carolina minus 335 into all your money line parlays, right? That's apparently what I'm saying.
Yeah, yes, always, because it's never going to lose ever. Florida State does not come back from 20-plus points down in a half and win a game on a buzzer beater. That doesn't happen ever.
So clearly not what I'm saying. Don't do that. If you're going to do North Carolina any money line parlay, put it in one parlay. Don't put the same game in all of your parlays. The idea, I think the money line price is a little bit short. I think North Carolina should be favored by more than this with regards to the money line. The spread, I don't think it's off by that much. I think we just have a bit of an edge here on the money line. Again, model says 8.6. The number that I'm seeing right now is 8. That seems about right. So with regards to laying 8, it's kind of a pass for me. Total's 151. Model says 152. Florida State's been a bit of an over team. North Carolina's been a bit of an under team. The issue with North Carolina and playing unders, I like North Carolina unders. They've been more of an under team, is that every once in a while they'll start fouling with 2 minutes to go if they're losing. Good news is they shouldn't be losing this game, so that shouldn't happen. A lot of variance, I think, though, with regards to both really the total and does North Carolina – we think North Carolina wins, obviously. Do they win by 6? Do they win by 10? Actually, the money line's a pretty strong play here. Again, risking a couple units to win just under 1 at North Carolina, minus 335. B-grade play. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, moneyline's a smart play here because, I mean, this is a very weird spot for both teams. Like, that major comeback against an in-state rival and winning on a buzzer beater, that's going to be big to come down off of. And
was that their season? Are they now like, we did it? Because, I mean, they've been so bad all season. Or is that launching them into playing better at it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the film all week was like, hey, let's repeat the second half. But then again, you got North Carolina, who's a good team, but has Duke next on the docket, which, I mean, that game's not as big as it normally is, but it's still a big rivalry, and it's senior night coming home. Just a very weird spot. Very easy for Florida State to cover. The first half could be very sleepy. And that's why I kind of like the under. I think the first half will be kind of slower. We won't get as many points. North Carolina should win this game. They're a much better team. I mean, despite all their many flaws, they can be pretty efficient. I mean, just look at that Virginia game. They handled it. They did well. They shot well. Look at the end of last year where they just kind of turned it on in the second half of the season and just really took off and got to the national championship game. This team has the talent. They're very good. They can't quite put it all together this year. They're going to win the game, in my opinion. But the 8, man, that's very nervous. I would much rather have a 7 here. 7.5 makes me nervous too. Yeah. So I'm probably going to wait on the 7 if he gets down there to play it. But I'm going to be on the under because I think that first half is going to be sleepy.
I think you're right. Maybe first half under, or again, I think game under is probably more okay here because North Carolina should be winning. So that weird late game foul thing that they've done a couple times when they've been down a lot shouldn't come into play here. You would think that kind of comes into play when North Carolina is down like 8 with a couple minutes to go. And in theory, that shouldn't happen. Again, you never know how games play out. That seems very unlikely, though. Again, model says 4 out of 5 chance. I think that's the bottom line. Model says 4 out of 5 chance that North Carolina wins. That makes minus 335, even though it is steep. A smart investment. And the other thing that I like about this play is that talk about North Carolina hit really well from 3 against Virginia, and that fueled them to that victory. I don't think North Carolina's figured anything out as much. I think they just shot really well. Yeah. The good news is in this game, they don't have to shoot that well to win. If they shoot their season average from 3 or even slightly below that, they still win. They don't need a great shooting night to beat this Florida State team. That was one really good half that Florida State's had. But in general, like you said, North Carolina is the much better team. Even though they're on the road, they should win. Again, 4 out of 5 times makes minus 335 a profitable investment. Again, according to Sideline, a B grade investment. The 7:30 Eastern, Norfolk State at NC Central. We are going to be on the over in this game. Number is 140.5. The model says this should be 144. You have a Norfolk State team that doesn't really play extremely fast. NC Central plays at pretty average pace. But the bottom line is that you've got 2 pretty good offenses here, or at least a pretty good offense in Norfolk State. And as we talked about before, a very bad defense in Norfolk State. So they play pretty high-scoring games. This seems more likely to be in the mid-140s than anything else. Talk about how many points have been scored in college basketball as of late. The points per game just continue to slowly creep up over time, these rolling averages. And again, it might slow down a little bit as conference tournaments happen. That is starting here on Monday, and we're going to talk about one of those games, but it's not this one. This being a regular season game. I don't see any reason why that trend continues. With regards to the side, NC Central is a 1-point favorite. The model says 2.8. So right now we'd have a B grade play on NC Central, either laying the point or at minus 122. It's almost to an A grade, not quite there yet. Bottom line is, I think this NC Central team is pretty good. It should be a really good game. I'm not sure they're necessarily better than Norfolk State, but at home, I think they got a decent chance to win this one. So I like the home team here, but the over is the stronger investment. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, this, like the over, I mean, you've nailed it. The points in college basketball keeps going up, and the books haven't kept it up right now. Unless we are talking about some of these slowest teams in basketball, 140 is a number I'm just going to play the over on because it's going to hit more times than it's not. North Carolina Central has an amazing defense, and their offense is good when they keep the ball. It's just they're turning it over more than 25% of the time when they have it. They struggle from behind the arc, but they're not that much of a three-point shooting team. I don't think they really care that much about it, but they get to the line a lot. Norfolk State playing pretty well right now. They have the best offense in the MEAC, and they do everything at a high level except they turn it over a little bit more than they force it, but that's because their defense is
everything on offense at a high level.
Yes. Their defense is not very good. No. Yeah. And that's where these points are going to come in. There's going to be open buckets for Norfolk State as North Carolina Central turns it over, and Norfolk State's not really going to be able to stop North Carolina Central. So we're going to get a ton of points. Should be a fun game, very tight game, as you can tell by the line. I think I lean the other way, taking Norfolk State. I think they might get in control of the pace just because of the turnover issue, but it's nothing I'm too heavily invested on. I'm more into the over here.
Yeah, at Norfolk State, obviously they should be able to control the pace. You like them at home a little bit more. On the road, that's the question, right? I think does Norfolk State control the pace? They want to slow it down a little bit more. NC Central, they don't want to go run and gun, but they don't really want to play slow either. But yeah, either way, there should be enough offense in this one and or lack of defense to get us into the mid 140s, maybe even flirting with 150 if things go right. Another over that we're going to be on 9 p.m. Eastern, Montana State at Eastern Washington. Eastern Washington's winning streak of, 17 games in a row, whatever it was, longest in the country, ending on Saturday. They are a 2.5-point home favorite. Model says 2.1. The model would have a C grade pick on Montana State right now. Not crazy for them to pull the upset. They are a pretty good team. And in fact, according to Sideline, they're actually better than Eastern Washington despite that crazy long win streak. At Eastern Washington, though, it's not really a play I'm dying to make, especially given the fact that Montana State's been a little bit of a disappointment over the last month, and Eastern Washington's been pretty good. Even with that loss, that was a tough loss. They've been pretty good for so long now. It's not really a pick that I'm dying to make. It said that the over looks pretty enticing. Sideline says 148 on the number of points. And while Montana State's been a little bit of more of an under team, Eastern Washington's been more of an over team to balance that out. So I think this model projection of 148 is just more accurate than 144.5. It's not that Montana State really pushes the pace necessarily, and they do have a decent defense. It's just that Eastern Washington at home is going to drive this pace, drive the scoring. It's kind of like we talked about with Norfolk State the same way. Norfolk State has a great offense and terrible defense. It's going to be points in here. Eastern Washington, great offense, not a great defense, going to cause us to have a lot of points. Eastern Washington's at home going to push the tempo a little bit harder. This feels like closer to 150 than mid 140, so over 144.5 to play here. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, I totally agree. Eastern Washington is going to be angry after that loss. I mean, that just was unexpected, and really kind of probably upset them. You don't want to end your regular season like that, so they're going to come out heavy. They've been killing it in conference play. I mean, I mean, they've won 17 in a row. It's kind of obvious, but I mean, they've got their effective field goal percentage up around 60%. They've lowered their turnover percentage. They're making 63.5 inside the arc and almost 80 from the free throw line. They really take advantage of any weakness you have, and even if you're not weak at it, they really make you work to be good on defense. I don't think Montana State is that. They're very good on defense, but it takes another level right now to get into Eastern Washington, especially at home. I think this game gets going a little bit. Eastern Washington want a little more pace than what Montana State's going to like. We're going to get a lot of points here. Montana State playing iffy. It's hard. Like than what they're like. There was a lot of predictions earlier in the year that they were going to win this conference, and they've been a real disappointment on the whole for that. Eastern Washington's kind of been a little bit of a surprise. I think we see that kind of play out, and we're getting up close to 150 in terms of total points.
Yeah, and I think, and you and I were talking about this, it's kind of one of those, like, the metrics kind of lean more Montana State, but again, it's not really a play that I think either one of us feel confident and comfortable in even. At the right number, right, at the night, whether you're talking about money line or points, at the right number, it makes sense, but at 2.5, that number isn't it, or at plus 130, that's not it. You know, at some point, if model would require 4 for an A grade play at 4. Now at least you're talking, because it should be a tight contest. Again, Montana State, lagging a little on defense relative to Eastern Washington's offense. Those are the two best units on the court, but Montana State's offense is better than Eastern Washington's defense, but they're on the road. So it's one of those where it's like, I need some points here, because all of that kind of balances out. And again, favors the home team. So I need a decent number of points or some decent plus odds. And again, that's where the model would lean to, but it's like, it's not enough for me to want to take it. That doesn't mean that Eastern Washington's a smart side either. At some point you can just kind of look at it and pass. That's kind of where I think both of our heads are here, and instead just focusing on the total.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's nerve-wracking how well Eastern Washington can play on offense, but like you said, all the metrics go Montana State, so it's nothing I want a part of on the side right now.
Yeah. Also at 9 p.m. Eastern, West Virginia at Iowa State. Going to take the dog here. West Virginia at plus 158. This is officially risk 1.16 units to win 1.84, I guess. It's a B grade play. Sideline says this should be Iowa State minus 2.5, and says the correct price is Iowa State minus 136. So we're getting 22 cents of value here at plus 158. Pretty solid investment here on the road team. And when you add in whatever the heck Iowa State did on Saturday in that second half against Oklahoma, makes you a little more excited. West Virginia played really well against Kansas, hung around, got that down to a 1-point game with the ball, chance to win and couldn't get it done. If they play like that against Iowa State, obviously Iowa State's a really tough place to play. But I just have not really liked what I've seen from Iowa State as of late. West Virginia's been up and down, but it's a game that they kind of need at this point to hang on. One more win, officially really gets them in the tournament. At this point, I'm not convinced they're in. They lose this one, they lose their last game, lose first game in the tournament. They're going to be firmly on the bubble. So I kind of feel like one more win, like they're really, I don't want to say fighting for their lives, not quite like some other teams, maybe not like a North Carolina, might be, but one more win they really need it. So the motivation's there. I think they can hang around. I like getting these odds. The alternative here would be plus 4.5. Model would give plus 4.5 an A grade play. So again, whether you're on money line or on points, West Virginia, the smart side here, value, either way you look at it. Total is 134. Model says 137.5. So the model would lean over. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, I love everything West Virginia here, which is points. So I love the over. I love them to win the game, and I love them plus the points. Pick your way of playing West Virginia and just do it. Iowa State's just struggling right now. They lost 3 straight, 5 of 6, including a 5-point loss in Morgantown. Their offense has just all but disappeared. The last 3 games, they've failed to break 55 points. That's just not going to win you many games, because this is very hard to hold a team under 50, and especially the level of competition they're playing. They struggle from the free throw line, and they foul way too much. They're just nothing they're doing right now is going well. Their offense is putting their really, really good defense, actually elite defense, in just bad positions. If you think about it in like terms of football or something like that, it's a turnover in a short field. Your defense could play great, but you're still giving up points. That's how it's kind of playing out here for Iowa State's defense. West Virginia, like you said, is playing pretty well right now. They're just not turning into wins and losses like they're hanging right around with these really good teams. It's got to be frustrating, and I think they're going to take a little bit of that frustration out whenever they can. They also really need this to just kind of secure that tournament berth, make sure they're nowhere near the bubble. I think a win on the road in Iowa State would go a long way for that.
Yep.
So I think West Virginia is the play here.
Yeah, and Caleb Grill coming back for Iowa State was supposed to solve those issues that they're having. At home was supposed to solve those issues they're having. Playing Oklahoma was supposed to solve the issues they're having. I mean, they had the trio there Saturday of we won't have an issue with this. We play better at home. Our offense is going at home. We got one of our better players back. We're playing one of the weaker teams in conference. And they took a 5-point halftime lead and lost by 11. And, I mean, it's not to say that same thing will happen necessarily, right? I always remember a team's never as bad as they just looked. It's not about that. It's like you said, it's been a long struggle, and what was supposed to fix that issue didn't. Maybe it gets fixed here. You never know, but I just think there's some value here on the dog in West Virginia. They've played much better as of late. The worst loss was that Texas Tech game. And again, we talk about how well Tech almost knocked off TCU and has been playing really well as of late too. So it's one of those where it's like, I, for the most part, really, I like what I've seen from West Virginia more than from Oklahoma as of late. So they ought to be able to have a chance to go on the road and win, which is crazy because I would have never said that a month ago. I would have never said one of these mediocre teams in the Big 12 can go on the road and win at Iowa State. But the way the last month has gone, I guess it's possible. We just saw it. I don't see why it wouldn't happen again, right?
Yeah, it's unreal. I just don't understand what happened to this Iowa State team. Their defense was at such a level, and their offense was at a high enough level that it made their defense play well. And now it's just their offense fell so far off they can't get that defense going.
I think a little bit of it is they kind of live by the three, die by the three, and I think teams have figured out that if you kind of pressure them on the 3-point shot, they don't really have a lot else, and that's where better offensive teams can say, oh, you're going to really guard us there on the 3. We can work it in and get something else. And Iowa State can't really do that. So it feels like, from what I've seen from Iowa State, they're just kind of left taking contested threes, and they're not really just generating much offense. And West Virginia, you got a smart coach there, knows the game plan, knows what to do. Can they do it? You never know. The shots fall, you never know. But I like my chances there because he should be able to game plan and see what all the other teams are doing to him to frustrate them. And if Iowa State only scores 50 like they did, here on Saturday, you make it real tough to win.
Yeah, that's 50 points doesn't win you many games.
Not many, no. One other 9 p.m. Eastern game, Baylor at Oklahoma State. I think Baylor's the side here. I like Baylor here. I don't love laying 1.5 on the road. Right now the money line's minus 122. Sideline makes this Baylor minus 115, and I do kind of think I would hold to that. If you get a Baylor minus 115, I think it's fine. I just don't want to lay too much juice here. We always talk about in baseball being a long season, college basketball is a long season. It doesn't matter whether you're in the beginning of a season or the end of the season. Bankroll management is bankroll management. You never want to lay a price that's not a good value. It's the same thing of you don't want to go buy jeans and pay $50 for a pair of $20 jeans. That's just not a smart investment, and it's the same thing here. I kind of think that 115 is kind of my point. If I can get that or better on Baylor, I think it's a decent investment. At the minus 120 into that, minus 1, I'd lay 1 point or I'd lay minus 150 is kind of my spots on Baylor. Otherwise, I just don't want to lay more on the road. Oklahoma State's a tough place to play, but I think they're the right side. Zero idea if Keontae George is going to play. I would have said that really matters, but after Saturday, I don't know if it does or not anymore. Like, Baylor looked really good without him. Obviously, he's a really good player. Obviously, they're better with him, but they've got a lot of depth. And that's, one of the biggest things, with this Baylor team. I think the lack of Avery Anderson is continuing to show itself for Oklahoma State in that their defense has just continued to look terrible. That's why we're on the over 141.5 here. It's not like either one of these teams is going to play with lightning speed, but Oklahoma State has been playing faster without him. Their offense has improved without him, but their defense has just fallen off a cliff. And when you talk about Baylor being the number 2 rated efficient offense in the country, according to my metric, I don't know about anybody else's, but I've got them at number 2. Against that defense, they should be able to score plenty of points. Oklahoma State's been scoring plenty of points, as of late this last, month or so. Kind of like you said, anything around 140, unless you're seeing something crazy, it's just kind of a go over. I think the same thing holds here. Model says 144, but again, when you consider the shift in Oklahoma State, I don't think a lot of times these small sample size things kind of ignore a little bit. this isn't a small sample size thing. This is just who Oklahoma State is now without one of their better players. And I really think that we're having a hard time catching up to this. Really, I think this is more likely to be up towards 150 with the number of points. So I think Baylor's the right side. I just don't want to lay too much on the road. I'd rather just focus on the over. I just think there should be a lot of points. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Baylor's probably the right side. Probably wouldn't regret paying the price that they're asking right now, but it's just more risk than I'm willing to eat at the moment. Just because Baylor's lack of defense, and that lack of defense is comparative to who they're playing against and stuff.
So defense isn't bad. It's just it's not up to par with some of these offenses.
Yeah, which is just mind-boggling to me for a Scott Drew team, especially returning how many they returned. Like I would have expected a lot more. That's just because he's that good of a coach. It's just kind of surprising. I mean,
well, it's like I talked about all season. Right? As a Baylor fan, watching a lot of their games early on, I was so confused with this team. I was so down on them because they had no identity. Early on in the season, they had a solid offense and a solid defense, but they didn't really have an identity. Didn't know what they wanted to do. And then Scott Drew just is like, you know what, we're going to be awesome at offense and screw defense, and that's what's happened, you know. But yeah, it's very surprising. That's not the way he tends to go, but that's the way he's gone with this team. And offense has been great, but yeah, the defense just not what you're accustomed to seeing from this team and what you would have expected.
Yeah. I mean, their opponent's effective field goal percentage in conference plays at 53, above 53. They're turning the ball over more than they force, and it's just. But the offense is elite, and it's making up for all those gaps because they are just very, very good offense. That probably, I think, honestly, the best offense going. They're just so good, and especially if you add Keontae George back into that, that's a player it's going to be a top lottery pick in the NBA draft, and it's going to do well immediately. He's just that kind of good. I mean, Oklahoma State, you know, like their defense is just not the same defense. We're still catching some numbers and stuff where people think that defense is up there around like Iowa State and those other really good defense levels. It is just not. Their offense is, I don't know. Like I want to say it's terrible, but it's not been as terrible here recently. And I don't know if that's just because they're not able to control the pace of play of their defense, so they're having to focus more on the offensive end. But either way, they're scoring more points. Baylor's going to score points. This one will get, I think, closer to 150 than we'll ever sniff 140. This will be a very good game, fun game to watch, and a lot of points.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we always talk about when you lose a player, how it affects the team. All the pieces, the tempo, all that other stuff. But I mean, to me, this one's just pretty straightforward. When you look at all the player metrics, I mean, Avery Anderson was one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive player that they had. But he was the second best defensive player. And so, I mean, to me, it's that simple. It's like you take away a guy who was holding the offense back, but helping the defense to be elite. And again, the offense now still not great. Still decent, right? But just relative to Big 12 standards of how many good offenses there are, you know, still behind, but, you know, makes the offense a whole lot more respectable by losing a player who wasn't helping them offensively at all, but you lost a player who was really helping them defensively. So it's the defense is now taking a step back. Offense is taking a step forward. Overall, it's not been as big of an impact as we would have thought. I think it's made them a little bit worse, but maybe not quite as much because the way the offense has stepped up. But yeah, we don't have to worry about that here in this play. We just have to continue on with the defense is just not what, you know, they were earlier in the season with him. And, you know, that should get us, like you said, much closer to 150 than 140.
Yeah.
And that takes us to our overtime segment at the conference tournament starting up here on Monday. Atlantic Sun, 7 p.m. Eastern, Florida Gulf Coast at Queens. All of these games are on campus sites, so the lower seed is the home team. Queens is the home team here. I think that Florida Gulf Coast is the better team. I think they're the better team by a decent amount. I think they got a chance to go on the road and win this. This is somewhere between Florida Gulf Coast should be favored and a coin toss game. Kind of depends on which eye you close. Sideline says Florida Gulf Coast by 0.9 points as they win at 51% of the time. But that's enough to make this plus 115 an A-grade play. It's pretty appealing in my mind. Yes, Queens won the first time, but there's a number of games that we can point to this college basketball season where one team won the first one, the other team won the second one, because that sort of thing happens. That's not crazy. Yes, you're going to have a really excited home crowd for Queens, but I think the Florida Gulf Coast is the better team. They can get this done. It's going to be a contrast in styles. Queens going to try to play fast. Florida Gulf Coast going to try to slow it down. But I think there's some value here on the dog at plus 115, or you can take plus 2, whichever one that you like. But I think the dog is the way to go. Total is 154. Models is 156, so would lean over, especially given how high scoring Florida Gulf Coast has been. So 2 great ways to look at that one. 3, I guess, if you like the plus 2 either way, whether it's money line points or the over. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think Florida Gulf Coast is the better team. I know they lost by 2 last time they were at Queens, but that was 84 or 82, high-scoring game. I think we're going to see another one of those, so I like the over as well. I think Queens going to get a little more of that pace involved. I think Florida Gulf Coast actually likes playing at that pace. Like basketball is a little bit addictive for a faster team. And so teams kind of get into that because you have to be very disciplined to slow a team down because you've got to remember to go slow and not get caught up in all that speed. I just think Florida Gulf Coast has the better defense by a pretty good margin. They guard against the three-point arc very well, and they do a good job of keeping their opponents off the glass. So no extra possessions given away. Their offense struggles at times, shooting below 50% from inside the arc, but they don't turn the ball over. And Queen's terrible defense is going to help that offense be a little more efficient than what it normally is. Like Queen's space, I think, has a lot to do with how bad their defense is, how quick they're giving up a good open shot and taking it out of the net. So I think that's where that pace kind of comes into, not so much that they really want to run. They get pretty aggressive and go to the line and then do pretty well there. But I think Florida Gulf Coast is just built to take advantage of where this team is weak. They're going to get revenge for this and keep going. That first game just determined where this game was played. I think no matter where this game was played, Florida Gulf Coast is going to win this one. Yeah,
you talk about Queens and their terrible defense. I've got both these teams offensively ranked between 100 and 150. Florida Gulf Coast defense, not great in the, barely over 200, but Queens is down at 323. And that's kind of the difference in this game is the fact that of all the units, they're all kind of okay. Both offenses decent. Like we said, should be a lot of points, but yeah, Queens defense is just terrible. And they're at home, but at some point, they need a little more than that to really offset this bad defense. They got lucky, I don't know, whatever. They got Florida Gulf Coast the first time. Don't think they can do it again here the second time.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to give Atlantic Sun the message, stop putting these teams in your conference tournament that can't go to the NCAA tournament so you don't have to deal with the whole Bellarmine mess. I mean, at least they got lucky this year, and the teams that can't go aren't very good in the conference. Yeah. But, man, I would just hate to see that mess fiasco again.
Speaking of, we've got some bonus content for you. You're going to talk about some conference tournament predictions, starting with the Atlantic Sun. So, Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, look, all right. So, with the Atlantic Sun, Liberty is the best team. They're favored like they're the best team. There's no question there. It's not fun to bet minus 200 favorites, and it's not fun. It's not like
not when you got to win. Yeah, not when you got to win multiple games. It's just not.
Yeah, it's
at that point. Just
wait for them to get to the championship game. You'll do a lot better. But for plus odds, guys, we like Kennesaw State here. They got the number 1 seed. They beat Liberty at home. I know unbalanced scheduling helped them out. The only time they played Liberty was at home, but they did get the win. They finished the 2 seed. They're plus 250 right now in most of your sports books and what I've seen. They finished on the road, back-to-back road games, got the wins to secure that 1 seed. They're a very good team. They're solid. 15-3. Their 2 losses, 2 of those 3 losses were on the road, and were both by 3 points. They led their conference in defense. They ranked second in offense. They shoot the ball very well. They have a positive turnover ratio. A lot of things are going well for them. The 1 seed matters a lot in this tournament because you always play the lowest seed remaining. So they will never get into a weird situation where there's an upset somewhere and now all of a sudden your 1 seed's playing the 7 or 5 seed when your 2 seeds play the 10 seed or something like that. You won't run into that because they will always get it. And they're one matchup with Liberty, who is probably who they're going to meet if they both think things work out the way they should. Liberty's going to get Kennesaw State in the championship. It was Darius McGee, and that was it. Liberty had Kennesaw State really stopped everybody else. I mean, Darius McGee had 43 points. He had a great game, but nobody else was there to help him. I just think if you want this, Stetson and Lipscomb are going to give you a little nerve-wracking after that. But then I think once they get by that first one, they should walk into the championship. And it's, you know what, you can easily hedge out of this too. You got enough room to do that, especially at a plus 250.
And all of these games are at campus site. So Kennesaw State having the home championship game.
That's big.
That's big. That's big.
We're going to do Sun Belt. All right, we got Southern Miss, who it is not very often you're going to get the 1 seed in the tournament with the tied for third best odds at plus 375. It's a little unfortunate that of their 4 losses, 3 of them are in their way to get to the conference championship, but they split with those teams. Those were on the road.
I feel like in that conference, everybody just ended up beating everybody. So I could be wrong, but someone will point this out because I'm sure there's one team that's not the case. But I kind of feel like when you take the top, we talked about this a little bit on that last show, how they were all kind of right there at the top, and I kind of feel like those top 5 teams, they all kind of beat each other up. So they're all kind of in that same boat of they've all lost to each other, they've all beat each other. It's just kind of a little bit of chaotic sense there,
Yeah. Just like we talked about that last show, Marshall went from first to third in that. Louisiana picked up second. Southern Miss got the first seed. Their free throws, they always force more turnovers than they turn it over, and they struggle to keep their opponents off the glass. Is a little worrisome, but they create all sorts of extra possessions in most of their games and most of their wins. They're creating a lot of extra possessions, really leaning on that defense. And since we're just looking at money line stuff here, the extra possessions go a long way into helping. They've done well at neutral sites before. They went to Mexico. They got 2 wins there that weren't close, but they weren't playing the level of competition. I think it was like Winthrop and somebody else where they won each by 20. They're going to be able to get rid of all the travel stuff with the bye. They're going to get there, practice there, get used to that routine there. It's not like they have to go there tonight, play tomorrow, because it's kind of a quick turnaround for these teams that have to play tomorrow or the next day. I think this one starts on Tuesday. But I really like Southern Miss to come out here. They've got they've led by a very good guard in Austin Crawley, but they've got a couple forwards that aren't too far behind. You've got another couple point guards that come off the bench and play, Arnold and Alvarez. They really quarterback that offense. This conference is just very even. You're going to have plenty of chances to hedge your way out of this one because you're getting almost 4x play out if they win it all. So each time around, you can hedge your way through it and never lose money with this.
Yeah, they'll like I said, they'll get out there in plenty of time because this is one where you get a bye if you were in the top, I believe 8, 4? And then a double bye for the top 4. And so, they're already out there now at this point, I assume, or they can get out there whenever the heck they want at this point. Yeah. And then they won't play until March 4th. These games will be 4th, 5th, 6th. They'll be bang, bang, bang. While the other teams are kind of beating each other up. Those top 4 definitely have a huge edge, but they should be able to be pretty prepared given that those top 4 teams get to just get all out there and hang out for a few days,
Yeah.
All right. Then that is all we've got for you, viewer. Jake, any parting words?
I'm so ready for conference tournament time. I love it. I love watching these. The little conferences are so much more fun because there's so much more on the line. Crowds get into it. People travel, and I cannot wait.
All right. Well, then thanks for tuning this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can enjoy all the sports betting content provided on this channel. It's dropped right into your feed. Be back again tomorrow with more college basketball betting tips. And until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.